Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you have yourself a good day, and as always, take care. Cool, that sounded good. Now, what was that next game I need to review? Was it Star Wars Apprentice of the Force for the Game Boy Advance, or was it Lego Indiana? Or perhaps it was that Star Wars Apprentice of the Force game for the Game Boy Advance. Or maybe it was that Simpsons Hit and Run game. Or I could just be talking about LittleBigPlanet today. Today's video is sponsored by us at 16-Bit Virtual Studios. Over the years, I've designed and 3D printed many accessories from my display stands to our styluses, our cases, and more. And I am proud at how useful I have found them to be and how well they've lasted over the years. If you are interested in my designs, you can download them for free, or, if you wish, we can print them for you at 16bitstore.com. And if you use our offer code 16bitreview at checkout, you'll receive 15% off your next order if you order 2 or more items. Now, I've been a fan of LittleBigPlanet pretty much since the beginning. LittleBigPlanet was one of the first games I ever played on a PlayStation 3, and I remember being blown away by this game more than any other title that we got for our then new PlayStation. And after all these years, LittleBigPlanet still blows me away. Not because it's a graphically stunning game, but because it's a very aesthetically pleasing game. It feels handmade with scraps of cardboard, glued cloth, all stitched together with love. You feel this attention to detail all across LittleBigPlanet's globe and the globe-trotting story mode, from its soundtrack to the level set dressings and the very physics which the game is based on. Yes, this isn't a very long game, totaling about half an hour per creator, and the physics-based platforming can be a bit hard to get a grasp on, especially since SackBoy feels a lot heavier than his plushy counterpart. But LittleBigPlanet feels complete from the start to the finish. And that's because each level isn't just a group of randomly assorted platforming levels stitched together without rhyme or just a difficulty curve, but instead, they act as tutorials for the player to base their own levels on, and hopefully inspire them to share these levels online. The goodies that you collect within each level can be broken down and experimented with to learn just how they work. That way, you can tinker and make your very own inventions or levels to call your own without any specific tutorials on how to do so. Or, like me, you can just get frustrated that they use a catapult instead of the much superior trebuchet, so you decide to make your own just to prove a point. That was the feeling that I had when I originally played this game back when it was new. I loved playing online and finding new levels and just making my own. However, since the online servers went down, there's only local play with LittleBigPlanet on PlayStation 3. And while I am sad that I can't go online, honestly, the fact that LittleBigPlanet feels just so complete as it is, I can say that while I do miss going online, its absence doesn't hollow out the game's experience, especially with the Game of the Year edition that includes some community levels on the disc, as well as some of the DLC. Now, if I had any real complaints for the first LittleBigPlanet game, it would be these long loading times. So that's more of a PlayStation 3 issue than a LittleBigPlanet issue. My only other real complaint is the DLC. I got a few DLC packs back in the day, from Pirates of the Caribbean to Metal Gear Solid, and a few costume packs to Lord of Bowten. And while some of these are better than others, the majority of the level packs were like the history pack, just a showcase of the things that you now had access to and nothing more. Honestly, I'd rather just they included a press X to claim and I just get the things instead of having to make sure I looked under every nook and cranny to find everything. Only Pirates of the Caribbean and the Metal Gear Solid level packs stood out to me back then, with their multi-level weak story that showcased what each of the new features that it includes did, like adding in the graphically dated water and the Paintinator. But even with these minor quibbles, I really enjoyed my time in LittleBigPlanet, both back in the day and even replaying it today. At one point in time, I completed everything that there is to do in LittleBigPlanet. I made levels and shared them online and so much more. I played with the physics, broke reality, and made so many fun things with it. In my view, LittleBigPlanet isn't just a must-own game for PS3 owners, it's a must-play game for anyone who likes games, even if it's only once. And back when I finished this game for the first time, the only thing that I wanted from LittleBigPlanet was more. And eventually that wish was granted, but not in the way I expected, since it came in the form of LittleBigPlanet PSP. Now, I've already talked in length about this game in its own review, so I won't be repeating myself too much here. However, for me, LittleBigPlanet PSP wasn't a proper sequel to LittleBigPlanet, but more of a side game, especially with how close this game's skeleton was to the originals. It's yet another globe-trotting adventure, going through the worlds created with amazing music and well-stitched graphics for the PSP. However, it was more glitchy and limited, with many features that were in the main game that are sadly missing here, like water, which the online community was always protesting all the time. Plus, with the lack of proper multiplayer, a lot of its downloadable content never made sense to me, since nobody but you would be able to enjoy that cool 99-cent dinosaur outfit that you got. And with only one level pack and a buggy create mode, there really was not a lot that was new here and made LittleBigPlanet really stand out to the first game. Things were looking up on PlayStation 3 as well, since it seemed that the success of LittleBigPlanet came out of nowhere for Sony, and they wanted to slap SackBoy on absolutely everything and anything. So when they were making their Wii controller for PlayStation, what a better face to include with it than SackBoy's. The result is what I would consider the train wreck known as LittleBigPlanet SackBoy's Prehistoric moves. It's noted that this is the first LittleBigPlanet game where LittleBigPlanet was taking a back seat in the naming department, with the focus being on SackBoy's Prehistoric moves. For all intent and purpose, SackBoy's Prehistoric moves is just DLC for LittleBigPlanet, but packaged as a standalone game to be used as a demo for Sony to parade around and show off their little new toy. As a standalone title, it's just unimpressive. It lacks any of the charm which the original game had, and blatantly reuses assets in a unimaginative way. It also removed the online and creative modes, all to push a gimmick which was more annoying to use than added to the game's experience, since the player with the Move controller isn't actually playing the game with everyone else. And if you want to play it by yourself, you're going to be kind of holding it like this. That image from the Splatoon 1 with the Wii U Pro controller and a Wiimote shoelace to the bottom of it really springs to mind with how clunky this control experience was. If this had been DLC for LittleBigPlanet, it would have been at least passable, since you at least get cool costumes to lord about in for the suffering, or new assets to make cool and better levels with, but as it is, it's more of a footnote and arguably the worst game in the LittleBigPlanet series. Thankfully though, my focus wasn't on the Move controller, at least not yet, since by the time it came out, I had already had the privilege to already be playing the newest game from Media Molecule with the LittleBigPlanet 2 beta. I went to work quickly with the beta, trying the one included level and experimenting with the new ways to play and make levels. The beta seriously did not omit a single thing from the full game in terms of creative mode. And I went to work making this level just to see what I could do with all the new bells and whistles. No longer was LittleBigPlanet constrained by the limits of a 2.5D platformer. Now I can make whatever I wanted with all these new tools. I played the living crap out of this beta and wore the beta vest with pride as I waited LittleBigPlanet 2 to finally come out. Now, LittleBigPlanet 2 released a little bit after Prehistoric Moves came out and included it as an add-on to justify the Move-compatible label on the packaging. When I got LittleBigPlanet 2, I remember being so excited for it and thinking that it was going to be a quantum leap forward for the series. Looking back now though, it's funny that out of the two LittleBigPlanet games, LittleBigPlanet 2 is feeling the most dated. The sluggish load times are still here, and the aesthetics are more man-made than handcrafted. But at its core, it's still a LittleBigPlanet game. While I prefer the original game's aesthetics, the gameplay is just so much better here in LittleBigPlanet 2. The physics feels just a bit tighter and a bit more control added to it. Plus, with the improved tool sets, creating new and more diverse game modes, it's no wonder why when LittleBigPlanet 2 came out, I rarely went back to the first game. I like the way the game handles the story as well. It's a lot more cinematic and straightforward, with a story that doesn't require you to look behind every nook and cranny to see the overarching plot happening in the background. Also, the game now had linked levels to give the game a much grander feel. Sure, there was less creators making the story levels in LittleBigPlanet 2, but there were more levels to play that actually results in a bigger game to complete. And much like in the first game, everything that you touch can be broken down in the creative mode to help you make better levels, as the story mode again is used as an inspiration to make your own levels, which makes LittleBigPlanet 2 a different experience to everyone that plays it. I personally saw LittleBigPlanet 2 as my first game design toolkit, where I learned the basics of logic and gates and even how to make my own levels in games that would eventually lead me to making Android and iOS games. Heck, my original logo for 16-bit was made here in LittleBigPlanet 2. Meanwhile, my younger sister used LittleBigPlanet 2 as a means to create stories. She made these adorable little levels that had grand ideas for how to tell the next story and lead into each other. She will always ask me for help almost all the time, trying to get the technical aspects of her story and her level to just work, like queuing up the sound effects and getting the dialogue to fire off just at the right time. And it was this level of flexibility that made going online with LittleBigPlanet 2 just so much fun and exciting. While the fun of the first LittleBigPlanet game was playing with your other Sack chums, LittleBigPlanet 2, I don't remember wanting to actually play with other SackBoys, at least outside of the story levels, to get more collectibles, since it was a lot more exciting to play the levels themselves. While the community was busy trying to make new levels, so was Media Molecule and their partners with a massive array of fun DLC to purchase and expand upon the LittleBigPlanet experience. These weren't the level kits from the first games. These were proper story and games. Yes, shallower than a proper story level, with no voice acting for the most part. But man, were these levels cool! The Muppets, Toy Story, Justice Leagues all had their own DLC level packs, each adding in new levels, themes, and abilities. But it was the Move Pack and the Cross Controller that I think were the largest standouts, especially for their polish and their quality. Plus, I got to try out LittleBigPlanet on a Vita before it came out on the Vita. Sadly, a lot of LittleBigPlanet DLC is just lost media nowadays due to the license deals expiring and the LittleBigPlanet servers going down. I had to DNS spoof my Vita just to play the cross-controller levels. And while LittleBigPlanet 2 is an amazing game by itself, without the online community levels and much of the DLC, it just feels incomplete and hollow. Unlike LittleBigPlanet, I can't really recommend getting a PS3 just to play it. So much of its content is missing. Though if you already have a PS3, it's a must-have title, especially the special edition, which comes with some of the DLC. But at the end of the day, LittleBigPlanet 2 was a success. And while it would be years and a release of a new console before we would see a new mainline LittleBigPlanet title, Sony wasn't going to wait to get SackBoy back in the limelight. There was spin-offs galore for the LittleBigPlanet series while we waited. Like SackBoy's first karting game, that's just a simplified reskin of Mod Nation Racers with a CTR-esque battle mode and mini games. The game was graphically polished for the most part, but I got a feeling that it was rushed for some reason. I can't imagine why that would be. As a result, while it's a technically functional game, its story was lackluster. Its controls were heavy, and while the tracks were imaginative, it sadly isn't fun to race around with, which is a bit of a critical flaw for a racing game. Thankfully, the other spin-off game which came around was LittleBigPlanet Vita, a redo of the LittleBigPlanet game on the go. Like its PSP counterpart, it's based off of the latest console title, but watered down a bit graphically. However, unlike the PSP game though, it's fully featured and impressive as heck. I've already reviewed this game, so go watch that video if you want my full opinion on it. However, despite the fact that there was only one DLC pack that was pretty much a redo of the PS2 version, I still found this to be the best LittleBigPlanet game to have been made, with a perfect blend of story, online levels, and the ability to download said levels to your device to play online. I just really wish this had a way to play multiplayer without going online. Out of the four main LittleBigPlanet games, this is the one that I honestly played the most of. But it was also the last of the LittleBigPlanet games I had an interest in playing. By the time LittleBigPlanet 3 came out, I was more or less done with the series. I didn't feel that LittleBigPlanet 3 could offer anything more than what LittleBigPlanet 2 already did. And without Media Molecule behind it, I wasn't really eager to go out and get it. And after talking to my sister who did buy into the game and told me about how much of a buggy mess it was, I kind of left it on the back burner, opting to get Media Molecule's other games like Tearaway, and just waiting for LittleBigPlanet 3 to become cheap enough to justify. For the PS3 version of the game, this never happened, as the game came out and fizzled out before it had its special edition or greatest hits version of the game made for it. So I waited and waited and waited. I waited so long that eventually I actually got a PlayStation 4 to close out some of my favorite first-party games that had their last entries on it, which eventually included LittleBigPlanet 3, which I got for $10. As I was starting the game up for the first time, there was a small part of me that remembered what my sister said and really wanted it to be wrong. I wanted to love LittleBigPlanet 3 like I did with the others. But I felt as if the soul of LittleBigPlanet left with Media Molecule. This time around, the studios behind LittleBigPlanet's DLC were in charge. And what they did with LittleBigPlanet 3 was take the existing LittleBigPlanet engine and make it work on PlayStation 4, and pushing it farther than the engine probably should have gone. While on a cursory glance, the game and its levels are fine, but the game had a width that would suggest a depth that just wasn't there, as the game sadly felt as shallow as some of the previous game's DLC. The game's story felt too short and ended too abruptly. The companions felt so underutilized that I often forgot that they were even a part of the game. LittleBigPlanet 3 felt like it was made by committee, and while the game does work as a single-player experience, I wouldn't call it a complete one. With that said, this is the smoothest looking and honestly best looking LittleBigPlanet has ever been. Its story and gameplay reminds me a lot of LittleBigPlanet Vita, but on a much grander scale. The power-ups are a nice addition too, though the sack pocket is really annoying and too easy to trigger. And I miss seeing the LittleBigPlanet 2 power-ups in this story mode. While I would like to appreciate what this game does right, it's hard for me to do so when it's just this buggy. From simple glitches that you'll just stumble across while playing community levels, to major ones like not being able to find levels in the first place after you wake your PS4 from sleep. Issues like this are just littered throughout the game, and with its long load times, it's really hard for me to just like it and enjoy the game as I did with the previous titles. But sadly, LittleBigPlanet 3 on PlayStation 4 is the only way to play all those old LittleBigPlanet 1 and 2 levels today. Or if you even just want to play online with your friends, ever since the PlayStation 3 servers were taken down. And this just feels wrong to me, especially since if I want to play with my friends and family, I would have to fork over money to Sony just to have the privilege to use a service that was once offered for free. All for a game which feels like the developers didn't even want to make. From this game structure, it feels like LittleBigPlanet 3 wanted to be a story-based game that starred SackBoy without the decade of baggage that came with the LittleBigPlanet series. And one of their developers, Sumo Digitals, eventually got their way and was able to continue the series with the release of SackBoy's Big Adventure. I've yet to make it far in this game, but from what I've played of it thus far, it's a fun, inoffensive 3D platformer, but it's not the conclusion I was hoping for with the LittleBigPlanet series. Looking back, I want to say that LittleBigPlanet was an obvious success with brilliant ideas and a winner of a game, but I feel with hindsight, LittleBigPlanet was just the right game at the right time. The internet was new, and the Marios which came before it didn't really know how to actually utilize it. Thus, a game with unlimited levels and 4-player online was revolutionary. But today, it's a bit old news. And to developers, a massive red flag of indefinite server costs and development time. I can't see a new game like LittleBigPlanet coming out in today's gaming economy, nor do I see anyone reviving it outside of fan and community projects. LittleBigPlanet was and is a unique timepiece where developers and big companies were trying to figure out this new internet thing, and what came out of it was a fantastic, creative, and fun game, which even without the internet is still fun all these years later. But anyways, thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you have yourself a good day, and as always, take care.